A Little Cloud is the eighth short story by James Joyce published in the 1914 collection titled Dubliners. This modernist fiction is from the third-person anonymous narrator and is set in the early 1900s in Dublin, Ireland. Don't forget to click the link in the description box below for more Dubliners stories. In A Little Cloud, Thomas Chandler is known as Little Chandler because of his short height and youthful look. He's excited to reunite with his old friend, Ignatius Gallagher, who moved to London 8 years earlier to pursue a career in journalism. Now back in Dublin, Gallagher has invited Little Chandler to meet him. While working at his dull job as a legal clerk, Chandler daydreams about Gallagher's success and feels down about his own lack of accomplishments. Little Chandler wishes to be a poet. He even owns poetry books but is too shy to share them with his wife. When it's finally time to meet Gallagher, Chandler heads out to Corliss's restaurant. As he walks to the restaurant, he imagines the elegant place filled with stylish, wealthy people. He recalls Gallagher's popularity and talent despite his flaws of drinking and money mismanagement. These thoughts give Chandler a sudden feeling of confidence, making him see himself as better than the ordinary Dubliners around him. For the first time in his life he felt himself superior. This moment revives his dream of leaving behind his uncreative life to become a poet, and he thinks he still has time at 32 to start fresh. He pictures Gallagher helping him get published in London and even imagines how critics might praise him as part of a new Irish poetic movement. Lost in these fantasies, Chandler nearly misses his destination. When he arrives at the restaurant, Gallagher greets him cheerfully, though he looks older, with a pale, tired look. Gallagher blames his worn appearance on the pressures of his fast-paced job. The two friends talk about their past and Gallagher's travels around Europe. Chandler, who hasn't traveled much, eagerly asks about Paris, curious if it's an immoral city as he's heard. Gallagher describes the lively nightlife and shares stories about Parisian entertainment and scandalous details. As Gallagher talks, Chandler begins to feel somewhat disillusioned, noticing a flashy, crass side to his old friend. There was something vulgar in his friend which he had not observed before. The conversation shifts to what Little Chandler's life has been like over the past 8 years. He tells Gallagher about his wife and their baby son, even inviting him to spend the evening with his family. Gallagher declines, saying he's heading back to London the next day but might visit again in a year. Talking and drinking with Gallagher raises feelings of jealousy and inadequacy in Little Chandler, and he becomes bitter of Gallagher's success. Bitterly, he thinks that if he had a real chance, he could have done something far better than Gallagher's flashy journalism. As they part, Little Chandler jokes that Gallagher might be married by the time they next meet. Gallagher brushes this off, saying he's not ready to settle down yet, he'd rather continue enjoying life. He adds that when he does marry, it will be for wealth. Gallagher even remarks that marriage to one woman for life would get a bit stale. Little Chandler heads home to his wife, Annie, who is upset because he's late for tea and forgot to bring her some coffee. She goes out to get tea and sugar, leaving Little Chandler to watch their baby, with instructions not to wake him. Alone with the infant, Little Chandler begins to reflect on his wife and feels a pang of disappointment. To him, Annie seems prim and pretty, and lacking in passion. He even grows discontented with the modest, tidy furnishings in their home, wishing he could break free from his dull life and live boldly in London, like Gallagher, as a poet. Trying to soothe his frustration, Little Chandler picks up a book of Lord Byron's poetry, but his baby soon wakes and starts crying. Unable to focus on his reading, Little Chandler becomes irritated, feeling as if he's a prisoner for life. He shouts "stop" at the baby, which only makes the child cry harder, to the point where Little Chandler panics, fearing something terrible might happen. Just then, Annie returns, sees their baby crying, and angrily demands to know what he did to upset him. She takes the baby, comforting him until he calms down, while Little Chandler watches, feeling overcome with guilt and sorrow, as tears begin to fill his own eyes. Now let's look at the main themes of A Little Cloud by James Joyce. Gallagher represents the kind of success possible for someone willing to leave Dublin behind. By choosing an expensive restaurant and sharing tales of his travels, Gallagher shows that his career is thriving. He proves that an Irishman can engage with Europe confidently and without losing self-respect. Gallagher moved to London with the same self-assuredness that made him popular in Dublin. He doesn't feel the need to impress others and goes after what he wants. Unlike Gallagher, Little Chandler is cautious and doesn't take risks. Though he daydreams about moving to London and becoming a poet, his life in Dublin fits his personality better. Before meeting Gallagher, Chandler seemed fairly happy with his life. It's only when comparing himself to Gallagher, who is so different from him, that Chandler starts resenting his family and Gallagher himself. When Gallagher refuses an invitation to meet Chandler's family, Chandler feels brushed off, suspecting that Gallagher thinks he has more important things to do. Gallagher's constant stories about his travels and his dismissive attitude toward settling down make Chandler feel that Gallagher isn't interested in anyone else's choices, only his own. Chandler's feeling of being trapped is worsened when he compares his own life to Gallagher's exciting career. Though Chandler admires Gallagher's success, he's mainly reminded of his limited life. While Chandler dreams of publishing poetry, it becomes clear Gallagher won't help him realize this goal. Ireland, to Chandler, feels like a metaphorical prison. He even uses Dublin's strict standards to judge Gallagher's stories of Paris, repeatedly asking if the city is immoral and as wild as he's heard. Initially, Chandler hopes to follow in Gallagher's footsteps but returns home overwhelmed, realizing that leaving Dublin wouldn't necessarily bring freedom. So as he ponders, if you wanted to succeed you had to get away, Gallagher remains superficial, flashy, and alone. Gallagher enjoys acting dismissive and self-centered. Though Gallagher's move to London advanced his career, it didn't make him more compassionate. Gallagher's selfish attitude only fuels Chandler's resentment, making Chandler feel Gallagher doesn't deserve his success. Frustrated by his own limitations, Chandler takes his anger out on his child, realizing how trapped he is. He's reminded of his restrictions, the furniture is still being paid off, his wife controls the home's decor, and his baby's needs keep him from finding time to read. When he finally tries to read Byron and the baby cries, Chandler realizes responsibilities bind him. After his outburst, he feels guilty, seeing that this moment of release only brings regret and changes nothing about his confinement. Hope you like and subscribe to our channel for more Dubliners stories.